Should Christians still keep the feast that the Jews kept in the Old Testament? Is this a moral issue? In this video, I'm going to give you 7 reasons why I believe Christians don't have to keep the Old Testament feasts. If you've not subscribed yet to our channel, then click on the subscribe button on the bell and on all, and you'll receive the notifications when we upload new videos. We try to upload a video every single week, teaching the Bible, theological topics, prophecy. We talk about marriage, we talk about health, everything that relates to the Christian walk in the days that we find ourselves in. If you want to donate to the self-supporting ministry, then you can do so by becoming a Patreon, going to PayPal, giving a once-off donation, or you can use the banking details below if you are a South African. We really do appreciate it, as we are a self-supporting ministry. The subject of the feast has created a lot of contention in the Christian church. Many people have left Christian churches because they believe we need to keep the feast, and they try to get others to keep it too, and then these rivalries would arise, then these arguments, etc. But what does the Bible say? Are we obligated to keep the feasts in the New Testament? What does the New Testament and the Old Testament say about this subject? I want to give you 7 reasons why I believe the New Testament Christian doesn't have to keep the feast, and that it's actually not God's will for us to keep it. Now, don't misunderstand me. The Old Testament feasts are amazing. They're beautiful. They all pointed to the Messiah. So therefore, there's nothing wrong with the Old Testament feast in its right place. But should the New Testament Christian keep it? And if I say that I need to keep it, that it is important, am I actually rejecting the Messiah in the process? Well, I'm going to give you 7 reasons why I believe we should not keep the feast. Reason number 1 is that I believe the feast only started with the Israelites when they left Egypt. Then no one kept the feast, even though feast keepers would try to twist Genesis chapter 1 or say that Joseph kept it, etc. But the actual only first time that the feasts were kept was by the Israelites when they left Egypt, when they kept the Passover. And that's Exodus chapter 12. Listen to Hebrews 11:28. Through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. So this text says that Moses kept the Passover. But that word kept is a fascinating word. When you study that word and you look at other translations, especially the Geneva Bible that was published before the King James Bible, you would actually see that this word kept means instituted or established, meaning the Passover was established in Exodus. That's when the feast started according to the Bible. So there is no moral obligation because the people before the Exodus didn't keep the feast, and neither do I believe the New Testament Christian. Reason number 2 is that only the circumcised male Israelites could keep the feast. And if you were an alien or a foreigner, you had to be circumcised to keep the feast and be a male. 3 feasts were to be kept by males that were circumcised: the Passover, which is related to unleavened bread, Pentecost, and tabernacles. Listen to Exodus chapter 12, 43 and 44. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner," meaning non-Israelites, "shall eat it. But every man's servant who is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then he may eat it." So the restriction here is that you must be an Israelite, you must be circumcised, meaning male. These restrictions were never lifted in the New Testament. There's no text in all of the Bible that says these restrictions were lifted. So if you want to keep the feast, then this restriction still applies. It is also fascinating to note that in the Gospel of John especially, John writes, when he talks about a feast taking place, he would say the feast of the Jews. For instance, the Sabbath is mentioned in the New Testament, but it never says the Sabbath of the Jews, because the Sabbath is a moral issue. It's the 5th commandment given to all mankind. But the feasts were only given to the Jewish nation. Therefore, John says, the feast of the Jews. Reason number 3, there is another restriction to keeping at least 3 of the feasts. That's the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that is, you need the temple in Jerusalem for you to keep these feasts. And once again, these restrictions were not lifted. Deuteronomy 16, 5-7. The Passover must not be eaten in the towns that the Lord your God is giving you. It must be offered at the place the Lord your God will choose for his name to be honored. Sacrifice it there as the sun goes down on the anniversary of your exodus from Egypt. The Passover started with a family celebration. Then God changed it to the certain place that he designated for them to keep it, which was the temple. And the unleavened bread feast and the Passover is connected. So that is the Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles, all at the temple in Jerusalem by circumcised males. These restrictions has never been lifted. Therefore, reason number 3 also concurs that we as the New Testament Christian do not have to keep the feasts. Reason number 4, the feast is not a moral institution. God suspended the Passover for decades in the Old Testament. When the Israelites left Egypt, they had to keep the Passover. Once they came to the borders of Canaan and sinned against God and went back into the wilderness for 40 years, they did not keep the Passover, nor were the newborns circumcised. Remember, only the circumcised males can keep the Passover, but they were not circumcised. And God only instituted this again once Joshua was in the promised land. Listen to Joshua chapter 5 and verse 5. Those who left Egypt had all been circumcised, but none of those born after the Exodus during the years in the wilderness had been circumcised. So it is very clear. There was a time that God did not allow his people to keep the Passover. It means it's not a moral institution. Neither did the people keep the feast before the Exodus, which also concurs that it's not a moral institution. So therefore, we as the New Testament Christian that I believe don't have to keep it, it's not a moral institution. It does not enhance my journey towards heaven. What is important when I go to heaven? The Bible says I need Jesus. The way, the truth, and the life. Reason number 5, and this is a very important reason, the purpose of the feast was to sacrifice animals. Now we all know we don't sacrifice animals anymore. Jesus is now the sacrifice. The purpose of the very feast was to sacrifice animals. Listen to Leviticus 23:37. These are the Lord's appointed feasts, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for bringing offerings made to the Lord by fire, the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, sacrifices, and drink offerings required for each day. Listen what the Geneva Bible says. These are the feasts of the Lord, which you shall call holy convocations, to offer sacrifice made by fire unto the Lord. There it is, to offer sacrifice. The Jerusalem Bible says, these are the solemn festivals of Yahweh, to which you are to summon the children of Israel, sacred assemblies for the purpose of offering burnt offerings. So it is very clear. The purpose for the feast was to bring sacrifices. It was to bring burnt offerings, and we don't do any of those things anymore. So how can you have a feast when the very purpose was to sacrifice when we don't sacrifice anymore? Passover implies you need to sacrifice. That's what the Passover was. That's Exodus chapter 12. Sukkot or tabernacles, you needed burnt offerings according to Leviticus 23:37. Kippur is built around sacrifices of bulls, rams, and goats. That's Leviticus chapter 16. These sacrifices were central to the celebration of these feasts. And Numbers 28 and 29 confirms that this was so. My friends, very clearly, reason number 5 is a slam dunk that we don't have to keep the feast anymore. Reason number 6, the feast pointed to the Messiah, and it met its end at the cross. Listen to Colossians chapter 2, 14-16. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day, or of a new moon or of Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. That's verse 17. The Bible says the handwriting of ordinances were nailed to the cross. These handwriting of ordinances contained food, the word meat there is food, drink, new moons, holy days, and Sabbath days. Now, what in the Bible contains all of these elements? Let the Bible explain itself. 2 Chronicles 33 and verse 8. Neither will I any more remove the foot of Israel from out of the land which I have appointed for your fathers, so that they will take heed to do all that I have commanded them, according to the whole law and the statutes and the ordinances by the hand of Moses. Now that's very clear. The handwriting of ordinances, Colossians chapter 2 verse 14, they were written by Moses, the ordinances by the hand of Moses. Now where did Moses write this? Deuteronomy 31, 24 to 26. And it came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of this law in a book, until they were finished, that Moses commanded the Levites, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, Take this book of the law, and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be there for a witness against thee. Now listen carefully. The book of the law was a witness against Israel. Colossians chapter 2 verse 14 says that the handwriting of ordinances was against us, and that was nailed to the cross. So it's the book of the law containing the handwriting of ordinances that was nailed to the cross. Now let's be more specific. What are these meat, drinks, holy days, new moons, and Sabbath days that Colossians chapter 2:16 is talking about? Let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 8 and verse 13. Even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moses. That's the handwriting of ordinances. Listen carefully. On the Sabbaths, on the new moons, on the solemn feasts, meaning the holy days, 3 times in the year. So it's not talking about the 10 commandments. It's talking about 3 feasts in the year, even the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles. These were the 3 feasts that you need at the temple. These are the 3 feasts that only the male circumcised Israelites could keep. And these 3 feasts contains all the elements we find in Colossians 2:16. Sabbath days, new moons, holy days, and within these holy days, these feasts, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Tabernacles, etc., you had to eat a certain way, you had to drink a certain way. You had to keep a Sabbath at the start of the feast and at the end of the feast. This is not the 7th-day Sabbath. Very clear, my friends. The Bible says, this is reason number 6, the feasts were nailed to the cross. It was but a shadow pointing to the substance, the reality, which is Jesus Christ. And that brings me to reason number 7. If I say I must continue in the feast, I am actually rejecting the atoning death of Jesus on the cross. It means the death of Jesus isn't enough. We need to return to those things that points to sacrifices, that points to a substance. It was but a shadow that pointed to Jesus Christ. And I believe that's an insult to Jehovah. That's an insult to the plan of salvation God has placed there for us. God is the one that decided what the Old Testament looks like. God is the one that decided what the New Testament looks like. We cannot go to God and say, you know what, you gave these things in the old. Doesn't matter what Jesus did. I want to keep it in the new. I need to follow what God says. And I believe these 7 reasons are solid. And it can set you free. If you've been wondering if you should keep the feast, if someone has come to you and said, hey, you need to keep the feast. Paul says, we need to keep the feast. We need to do this. We need to do that. Then I trust and I pray that these 7 reasons have set you free from this burden. We can look to Jesus. He is the fulfillment of them. These feasts pointed to Him. We need Jesus, the only way and truth and life available today. May God richly bless you. Pray for my channel. Leave a comment below. I know the feast keeper is going to leave many comments, and that is okay. But if you learned something, you were blessed by this video, leave a comment below. Like, share it with your friends, and pray for our channel as we share the truth with people for this time.